Hi, and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's review of Game of Thrones Season 4. In this video, I'll give my overall view of Season 4 as a whole. I won't get too much into detail since I've already done individual episode reviews. I'll give my opinion of the overarching storylines of Season 4. Then I'll give a list of some of my top 10s of the season. For the purpose of this review, I won't mention the books at all and judge the show on its own merits. I plan on doing a series of videos where I specifically look at the differences between the show and the book. So I'll leave all my books observations for that. Also, this is your spoiler warning for anything up to Season 4 in the show. Overall, I think Season 4 is probably my favorite season of the whole series. I don't want to say for certainty yet, but it is definitely up there as an exceptional season and an improvement on Season 3. But let's examine each of the key characters' journeys this season. So first let's look at the Lannisters, whom I believe were the central focus of Season 4 and the most interesting this year. Tywin Lannister's journey this year was exceptionally good. Tywin has been established, particularly in Season 3, as probably the most powerful character in the Game of Thrones and one of the most cunning. But this year we're treated to this powerful man's downfall. First he's defeated by Cersei, who outright ruins his plans to marry her off by threatening to destroy their house. Then in a much more permanent manner when he's unable to stop Tyrion from killing him. This powerful man who cares most about his family name is undone by the same family and is helpless to stop it. This was also a very good year for Tyrion, not in the fun, witty way of Season 2, but it was thrilling to see how he handled his life being in constant peril. This was also a good year for Cersei, who attempts to manipulate the situation in order to kill Tyrion, and once that's over, she actually manages to defeat her father. I warmed up much more to Jaime's redemption this year, as he solidified it much more by sending Brienne to save Sansa, and by choosing Tyrion over Cersei, and being the one true friend that Tyrion needed. Season 4 also saw the introduction of Oberyn Martell, one of the most effective character introductions since the beginning of the series. Oberyn quickly became a fan favorite, and for good reason. I must say, when I first heard about him, though, through the previews, I was afraid he was going to be an unnecessary distraction, as some new characters introduced in long-running TV series typically are, but he proved to be a huge asset to the storyline. Another character I can get behind is Tommen. Although he didn't appear much this season, for some reason I really loved all the scenes he was in and I wanted to see more of him. I guess I was used to having to deal with the evil Joffrey as king. It brings such a new dynamic to have the Lannisters' latest pawn to actually be an honorable young man, but one who is very easily manipulated, to be sure. Shay's storyline this year was very well done. As I mentioned in my review of the finale, it reminded me very much of a Shakespearean tragedy. The way that Tyrion has his plan to save her life, and it ends up backfiring him in the worst possible way. He thinks her life is at risk in King's Landing, but she won't listen to him, so he pretends he doesn't love her anymore in order to get her to leave, but instead she ends up being so hurt by him that she turns on him, and this accumulates in Tyrion being forced to kill her in self-defense. It's such a beautifully rich, tragically well-done story. I wasn't that interested in Brienne this year. She wasn't horrible, but I found most of her storyline, particularly with her messing around with Podrick, to be filler and not very interesting. Now, Arya and the Hound, their storyline was so awesome in the first episode, and when she got on the boat to Braavos, that was amazing. Everything in between, however, was a bit of a problem. This was clearly a case of the show creating filler because her storyline got ahead of the others, so they needed to give her something to do, which resulted in a lot of boring and pointless scenes that were rendered pointless in the final episode anyway. Stannis was mostly just dicking around doing nothing like he was in Season 3, but only in the first half of the season. In the second half, he barely appears, but when he does, it's in a pure awesomeness capacity. Sansa gets really interesting this year. She gets more interesting till the end of the season, where she's utterly intriguing. So she's gone from being an uninteresting, weak, and unintelligent character to becoming a witty major player. The transformation, as she learns from her teacher, the devious Littlefinger, was boring at times, but mostly worth it. Theon's storyline with Ramsay started out so great, but got less interesting as the season went by. But overall, it was an improvement on Season 3. Seeing how beaten and defeated and brainwashed he was really interesting. Combine that with Ramsay's quest to please his father and become a full Bolton made this storyline really interesting. But too bad it was spoiled by a few anticlimactic moments and the goals that were too easily achieved. Jon Snow and the Wall really built off the high that they created in Season 3 and made a really suspenseful storyline about the incoming wildland invasion, which accumulated into another epic full battle sequence episode. So I can't complain at all. Mid-season, we were treated to a storyline about Jon Snow taking care of the mutineers that killed the Lord Commander, which was ultimately just filler. But unlike the Arya and the Hound stuff, it was interesting and thrilling filler, so it's filler I got no problem with. This is by far the best season for Bran. Every year I tend to find his storyline one of the least interesting. However, this year they really turned it around with him. Part of how they did it is by not having him appear that much. They only show him when he does something worth showing. He was also involved in the Craster's Keep excursion, which I felt was an excellent choice. Bringing the storyline of Roose Bolton's lapdog Locke trying to kidnap him brought an excellent level of tension to his storyline. And then he didn't appear again until one of the best sequences of the season, when they were attacked by deadly wights and saved by one of the children of the Forest, whom I've been dying to meet. Definitely the best year for Bran. And finally, we get to Daenerys and company in Slaver's Bay fighting to free the slaves. I heard a lot of complaints about her storyline this year, and I will admit it's not one of her best, but I did think it was a necessary step and an interesting journey when you look at it. In Season 3, her storyline was all about kicking ass and taking names. She sacked a couple of cities, kept gaining more advisors, more armies, her dragons got more badass. So where does one go after rising so quickly? The answer is back to reality. And reality kicks in this year for her as she goes on what can best be described as a downward spiral, where she finds ruling is much harder than she would have thought. She finds out her most trusted advisor has betrayed her, and her greatest assets, the dragons, turn into a hindrance when she finds she can no longer control them. So yeah, definitely not as exciting as sacking cities with dragons, but this sort of interesting intrigue with a dose of reality that we come to expect from Game of Thrones. So overall, I was satisfied. So now I'll move on and do a couple of top 10 lists. I'll do my top 10 most important, most interesting characters of Season 4, and then I'm going to do my top 10 episodes of Season 4. I'll do another video for my top 20 favorite moments of Season 4 and my top 10 least favorite moments of Season 4. I can't fit it all in that video, so I'll do another video for that one. But so now let me get into my top 10 most interesting and important characters of Season 4. So number 10 is Margaery Tyrell. Although she didn't appear much in the second half of the season, her ability to manipulate Joffrey and then Tommen and maybe even Cersei as well was definitely noteworthy and contributed to the intrigue of the show. Number 9 is Arya Stark, who probably would be higher on my list had it not been for all the pointless filler and ridiculous fan service, but seeing such a vital change in her in the first episode alone is noteworthy. Number 8 is Daenerys Targaryen, who learns this season that ruling is not all it's cracked up to be. Number 7 is Bran Stark, who learns to warg into Hodor to fight off hand-cutting kidnappers and Jojen-stabbing skeletons, and finally arrives at his destination where he will learn how to fly. Number 6 is Samwell Tarly, who really steps up this season. He learns to hold his own with Jon Snow, learns how to swear to get what he wants, and he mans up to protect the woman he loves. Number 5 is Sansa Stark, who learns from the best, Cersei and Littlefinger, to become a master manipulator, plus bonus points for her for finally escaping King's Landing and the Lannisters' grasp. Number 4 is Oberyn Martell. Despite his grisly end to his very short run on the show, he manages to make a lasting impression on not just all the people of King's Landing, but the fans of the show as well. Number 3 is Cersei Lannister for her success in her quest for vengeance against Tyrion, but more importantly for finally getting the last word with her father. Number 2 is Tywin Lannister for his spectacular fall from grace. And number 1, of course, is Tyrion Lannister. He's been humiliated, threatened, and lost his trial by combat, but in the end, he tells all of King's Landing what he thinks of them and puts a couple of arrows into his unloving father. Okay, so for my final top 10, I will rate the 10 episodes of the season from my least favorite to my favorite. Since there are exactly 10 episodes in this season, nothing will be left out. So number 10 is First of His Name. As I said when I first reviewed it, it was my least favorite episode of the season. It contained far too much filler and less interesting scenes for one episode. The scenes with Cersei trying to butter up the judges, and the scenes with Brienne and Podrick stuff, and you got more boring Arya and the Hound stuff, and it equals one of the least interesting episodes of the season. However, its saving grace was the Craster's Keep storyline, which, although filler, it was really exciting, proving there's no such thing as a bad episode of Game of Thrones. Number 9 is Breaker of Chains. If you notice from my top 10 least favorite moments of the season list, this episode contained a lot of moments on that list, such as Sam dumping Gilly at Mostown, a rehash of Oberyn's brothel scene, and Arya the Hound dicking around with the farmer. However, this episode also contained some of my favorite moments, such as Sansa finally escaping King's Landing, Tywin giving Tommen a speech, whose meaning is "do as I say," and Daenerys giving her badass speech to Meereen. Number 8 is Oathkeeper, a fairly unremarkable episode that was interesting but not great. It was mostly setting up Bran's storyline to find Sansa, setting up Jaime's storyline to help Tyrion, and setting up Craster's Keep storyline that would be explored in the next episode. I did notice very much when we were watching this season in one session that the quality of the season noticeably dipped for 3 episodes, for episodes 3, 4, and 5, and then went back up to the strong point. So so the season started with 2 very strong episodes. It dipped for episodes 3, 4, and 5, and then in episode 6 it went up and went further up until the end of the season. So this is reflected in my top 10 by having these 3 episodes at the bottom, but as I said before, there's no such thing as a bad episode of Game of Thrones. Number 7 is Mockingbird, an above average episode that was also mostly set up, but it had some great moments such as Oberyn offering to be Tyrion's champion and Littlefinger pushing Lysa out the moon door. Number 6 is Two Swords, by far the best introductory episode to a season. This episode served the function of most first episodes of the season do, which is to remind us what happened in the previous season and prepare us for what will happen. But what made this episode so above par was the extraordinary introduction to Oberyn and the amazing fight scene with the Hound and Arya. This scene, that scene alone made this episode amazing. Number 5 is The Watchers on the Wall. Now we're getting into my top 5 of Season 4, and I can confidently say that all 5 of these episodes will probably make it to a top 10 episode list of the entire series, and with a series as great as Game of Thrones, it's saying a lot. So this made me forget all the complaints I had about the Wall in the first 2 seasons and completely sucked me in. Many were doubting that these characters could sustain an entire episode by themselves, but it definitely did it, with one of the most amazing battle sequences of the entire series. Number 4 is The Lion in the Rose. Of course, the Purple Wedding and Joffrey's death was amazing, but it wasn't just that. There was a lot of quality drama in this episode, such as Tyrion trying to push Shae away to save her life, seeing how broken and brainwashed Deanna's become, and how vicious Ramsay is, and who could forget the cool vision sequence Bran had where he warged into a weirwood tree. Truly a great episode. Number 3 is The Mountain and the Viper. Again, in the mountain, and Oberyn's shocking fight scene was amazing and had people talking almost as much as the Red Wedding, but that wasn't the only treat this episode had in store for us. We also finally get to see Sansa turn from a piece into a player, as she so expertly manipulates others to get what she wants, and we got to see Arya laugh in the face of irony. Number 2 is The Laws of Gods and Men. This episode had a very strong sequence in every single scene. First, only Game of Thrones can take you to a bank and give you such a suspenseful and dramatic scene, and there wasn't even a robbery. Then, despite its anticlimactic ending, it was awesome to finally see Yara duke it out with Ramsay over Theon. Next, we see the new small council in action as Tywin comes up with the plan to deal with Daenerys. And finally, we get the best sequence of the season where Tyrion tells the people of King's Landing exactly what he thinks of them. And my number 1 episode of this season is The Children. Like The Laws of Gods and Men, every single scene in this episode was amazing, but even more so because they saved the conclusion to almost every single storyline for this one episode, where each and every scene is so suspenseful and powerful. I can't believe they packed so much awesomeness into one episode. From Stannis crushing the wildling forces, to Daenerys locking up her dragons, to Jojen getting killed by skeletons, to Tyrion killing his lover and his father, this episode never lets up. So that's it for my Season 4 review. I'll be doing another video which will have my top 20 favorite moments of Season 4 and my top 10 least favorite moments of Season 4. I'll also have a Season 5 prediction video coming out pretty soon. And also down the line we'll be doing some comparisons to the books and the show. So keep an eye out for those, and thanks for watching.